beverage and join us every Tuesday at noon to meet the movers and shakers in our community that are not letting anything hold them back. We are here to inspire you to continue to grow and scale your small business venture. Don't forget to call us at 505-842-9003 for all of your PPE supply needs. And for this podcast and any and all other information about the Hispano Chamber of Commerce, visit us at www.ahcnm.org/chamberchat. We'll give you another minute if you are joining us live.
Hello, everybody. Ernie Citabaca with the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce. I'm honored and excited to be here today to do a podcast with my great friend, Michelle Hernandez. But first, I want to talk about some current and upcoming events. Biz Gratis, Wednesday, November 17th at Macy's at Coronado Mall. Okay, be there or be square. Be Well NM. So we are the education and outreach vendor manager of the Be Well NM contract, which means throughout the state, we try to enroll eligible folks in this great insurance program. And I got to tell you, right now, we just had an event this past weekend where we enrolled a lot of folks, and some of them, their premium was $0 per month. There was one that was $2.16, I think I remember. Because of the ARPA, the American Recovery Act, I think I'm missing a P, ARPA. There's some great subsidies that people need to take advantage of. In New Mexico, we have a lot of eligible opportunities for people that can take this opportunity. Anyway, it started November 1st through January 15th. Please look into it. You folks might have friends, family, yourselves. Please look into this great insurance program. It's now state-based exchange, and so call 1-888-451-7823, and one of our trained staff here at that chamber, the Hispano Chamber, can answer all of your questions. Okay, programs. We also have a PPE program. We have from 9 to 1 p.m. Monday through Fridays. Pick up your PPE. You know what? We still need it out there. Unfortunately, we still need to be giving that out. Next podcast, November 30th, with Sherman McCorkle, Sandia Science and Technology Park Development Corporation. And also, you can always visit our community calendar to check on events that we have. And we have lots of events. We do. We have a lot of events, right, Michelle? Hey, welcome. Thank you for being here today. I'm excited because, I've known you a long time, and I know a lot of people know you, but there's a lot of people that might need to get to know you. So tell me just who is Michelle Hernandez?
Feels like I'm on a Merv Griffin show. If many people remember that.
Because of the white hair.
Because of the white hair, probably. Yeah. Phil Donahue, maybe a little more like that. So, I am an attorney here in Albuquerque. I'm a partner at the Module Sperling Law Firm. My family is originally from northern New Mexico and from Taos specifically. And I grew up a little bit in Taos, but mostly in Albuquerque. I am a product of the Albuquerque Public Schools. I graduated from Del Norte High School. I went to TVI when it was still called TVI. And then I went to the University of New Mexico and graduated with a degree in political science. And I knew from an early age that I wanted to be an attorney. And people often ask me, why did you want to be an attorney? And my first initial answer is a very honest answer, is because my family said I'd love to argue. And I said, I'm not arguing, I'm just debating so I understand the things better. So Ernie probably agrees with that argument statement. But it is just so I can really understand things. And so I majored in political science, mostly because that's what I was really interested in history and English. But I did know that I wanted to go to law school. And I decided to go out of state. I never thought when I was growing up, honestly, that I would ever leave the state. And when I got accepted to UCLA, I knew I needed to challenge myself. And to this day, I remember packing up my car and heading out to California thinking that I was crazy and I should turn back and never leave. But I don't regret going there. It was a wonderful experience. I met some people who had close ties to New Mexico when I was at UCLA. Professor Cruz Reynoso, who passed away actually in this past year, who's a notable civil rights icon, really. He was a justice for the California Supreme Court, had actually taught at the UNM Law School. And I still remember it was in my first year. They have like a first year assembly. It's like you're starting high school, but you're starting law school. And they have everybody who's going into the law, their first year class. And Professor Reynoso started talking about himself, and he said, you know, his background, and he said that he had taught at the UNM Law School, and he used the term manitos, and because he said 2 of his kids were actually born in New Mexico, and I felt like I was like the only one who knew what that meant. So there was like 3 people from New Mexico in the entire school of like almost 1,000 people. So I met him, and actually before that, UCLA had a week-long prep course that they had really for minority students and people who were coming from out of state. And I met Professor Laura Gomez, who actually grew up in Albuquerque as well and had gone on to Stanford and was just starting her career as a law professor. And so I met her as well. So I kind of had some good kindred spirits that I met very quickly on at UCLA. So I went to UCLA for 3 years, and I applied for a judicial clerkship with the New Mexico Supreme Court and was honored to clerk for Justice Baca for 2 years. And after that, probably about 1999, started the Module Law Firm, and I've been there since, so about 23 years.
Oh, wow. Hey, so what does it mean to clerk? What does that mean? I've always heard that all the time. What does it mean when you clerk for a Chief Justice or a Supreme Court Justice? What does that entail?
So it's interesting you ask that, because Professor Gomez, when I was in law school, approached me and said, "Are you applying for clerkships?" And I was almost embarrassed to ask, like, what's a clerkship? I didn't know what it meant. And I knew there were, you know, all these people who were like at the top of their class and had, you know, families who'd been lawyers and knew a lot more about the legal system than I did. They were all kind of scattering around and scammering around to apply for clerkships. And I didn't know what it meant, but I thought you need to be at the top of your class. And I was, you know, I did well, but I was not that very top of my class. And she said, you know, it's a great experience to work with the judge. And it really is an honor to do that, and it kind of leads to other things, and that's exactly what it did. So what it means is it means different things for different judges, but for Justice Baca, New Mexico Supreme Court, there's 5 justices, and they each have 2 law clerks that usually come right out of law school, and you do research and writing for the judge you're assigned to. Oftentimes it's specifically related to a case that they're hearing. Sometimes it may be one particular issue. The New Mexico Supreme Court is very collaborative, but they do assign authorships to one judge at a time, and then you help the judge do the research and the drafting, and then it gets circulated through the court. So you kind of have a front row seat to some of the most controversial, groundbreaking issues right out of law school. So it's an incredible experience. Particularly when I was there, we worked on a case that involved, that's when Governor Johnson was the governor, and the Supreme Court actually found him in contempt of court. So that experience was unique even to the court, because all 5 justices co-authored that opinion. And I distinctly remember the question of, what if what's the penalty? Like, who goes and do they arrest the governor for not showing up to court? And since the governor is the chief executive, can't be the state police. But anyway, it was a crazy experience. And like I said, you know, I was just fresh out of law school.
Ooh, that's pretty cool. Wow, that's really interesting stuff. You know, so you started with Madrid. Madrid is a large law firm here. Can you talk about that experience and the fact that I may be mistaken, but I don't think there's many Latinas that are in large law
Sure.
firms? You know, I think there's some statistics like that. So can you
Sure.
kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I learned about the legal field sort of one morsel at a time. So I didn't know what clerkship was. I also didn't know anything about much law, about any law firms in Albuquerque or in New Mexico. So I learned, from some connections I had at the University of New Mexico. And one of those connections was I had actually done a work study position with the student activities, and Debbie Morris, who was the director of student activities, knew that I was wanting to go to law school, and we kept in touch. And she said, "You need to meet one of my former students, who was Max Madrid," and he was working at the module firm. And so I got to know him, and then as I got to know him and more about the firm, knew that module, I think now we're close to like an 80-year history. I mean, maybe even more than that. So it's one of the oldest. Usually we're neck and neck with another unnamed firm of being one of the largest firms in the state. And so we also work on some groundbreaking things because we get sort of the most high-level cases. We're fortunate to be working on those cases. And again, at a young level, you can have those experiences. But your question about partners, so I have been involved with the Hispanic National Bar Association. In fact, I served as the regional president a couple years ago. And one of the things that the HMBA did was they did a study in particular on Latinas, female Hispanic women in the legal profession. And they actually released the findings of that study at I believe it was their mid-year or their annual convention that they had more than 10 years ago. And the statistic that stood out in my mind was they tracked a lot of different things, but they tracked how many Latinas are partners, full equity partner owners in private law firms. And that statistic compared to all lawyers in the U.S., it's less than 1%. I think it's 0.008 or something like that. And unfortunately, that was 10 years ago. That statistic really hasn't changed. So that's a national statistic. And you would think with New Mexico having such a high Hispanic population that our statistic would be better than that. I don't know what it is, but it probably is slightly better. But I will tell you, I work for a great firm, and we have worked very hard on recruiting diverse lawyers. But I have been often the one of two or the only Hispanic female partner at my firm.
Wow, that's interesting stuff. There's interesting statistics now about how the Hispanic and Latino economy is kind of driving the United States economy. I think we're the 8th largest economy in the world, larger than Canada, Brazil, Italy. I think we're the 3rd fastest growing economy. It's China, India, and the Latino, Hispanic, United States economy, that part of the economy. So how do we really get more Latinos, Latinas elevated to where they should be and attracted to the jobs that we know they're very capable of? What do you think we need to do for that? Because that's a mission we need to have.
That's I don't know what the economy works out in numbers, but that's the $3 billion question, right? So I think that, over my professional career and as a student, I've listened to so many different lectures and been to seminars, about different facets of different types of minorities and why is this group more successful than others. And I think if you ask that question, and Ernie, you know that you're involved in the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, if you ask that question in Miami, you're probably going to get a completely different answer than if you ask that question in New Mexico. I think my own take on how to answer that question in New Mexico is we really need to encourage our community to go into fields that are not traditional fields. So, for instance, going into corporate law, going into banking, I think those fields are still highly underrepresented, and I firmly believe that it's not solely a matter of lack of recruitment from those industries or those companies. Sometimes I do believe that it's internal. And I think it's just, instilling that pride in people, saying you should, this is a very interesting field, banking, corporate law, or whatever it is, and this is something that you would be good at. And I think that those kind of conversations need to happen often and need to be happening at all levels. So when I was clerking for the New Mexico Supreme Court, I had actually worked at the module firm during that summer, and I had a wonderful experience, and they thanked me for it, and they said, we don't hire law clerks, so kind of look us up in 2 years, and that's just what we do. We just don't offer it. We know you're going to do this judicial clerkship, and that's wonderful, but just look us up in 2 years. And so that was fine with me. That wasn't different than most law firms said. And so I clerked, and about 3 months later, I got an offer, which was wonderful, but scared me to death. And I talked to Justice Bach about it, and was like, I don't know why I'm freaked out about it. This is wonderful, right? Isn't this what I was going for? I just said I didn't think I'd have to make this decision. Now I thought I'd have 2 years kind of figure this out. And he said, well, let me give you some unsolicited advice. And he goes, I'm not sure if this is what you're feeling. And it was. He was like, and you know him. So Justice Baca's cousin is Art Melendres, who's a senior partner at our firm. And he said, Art had the same situation too. Like, he had clerked for a federal judge, and then he got an offer at Module, and his feeling was there, and I'll just use the term, is that, are you selling out by not doing personal injury work or criminal law, where there are so many Hispanic lawyers that go into those fields, family law. And so Justice Baca shared the same story that he shared with Art, which was another story. It's very simple, but it just shows the point, is that there was a young lawyer right after the Civil Rights Act had been enacted, and he went to go work for a large manufacturer or something. And his company asked him, okay, we got these civil rights acts, like, how your task is to figure a way around them. And he went and worked and researched and all that, and he went down there and he was like, you don't. This is how you comply with them. And the point is that you can make so much of a difference from within. We need people sort of at all fronts, right? So he said, that ACLU lawyer, the plaintiff's lawyer, these people who are doing public interest or working for government lawyers, we need people from our community serving all those roles, but we can't neglect how important it is to have people serving from within, especially now, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody's talking about systematic changes, right? Systematic. I'm like, how can you change systems if you're only dealing with it from the outside? You really need to have people who are like-minded, who are inside, who can teach people how society has changed and how different things, we can do things differently.
Wow.
Did I answer your question?
No, you did.
I went on.
You did. Well, it's a different time than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, but maybe it's not. We still lag behind dramatically in how many people that are Hispanic that are on corporate boards and C-suite positions. And, I think here at the Chamber, that's one of our goals, is to help change that. So what would be, I guess, your advice to somebody that might be graduating from St. Pius High School in the near future to see what they want to do? And pretty soon we want to talk a little bit about your family,
sure.
But you have 2 daughters and a husband and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So what's your advice to people that are just getting out of high school and they're Hispanic? We're 48% Hispanic here. What would your advice be?
I think that, and it's not always the popular statement, because people talk about the brain drain, but I think that wholeheartedly that kids just need to experience things that are outside their comfort zone and outside New Mexico. I stayed in New Mexico until I went to law school for a couple of reasons. That was the only option for me. And I just honestly didn't know there were any opportunities. So my advice would be to, take some time to explore any opportunity and talk to people who are doing things that you may not know exactly about. If you have that opportunity to talk to someone who's an accountant or someone who's a lawyer or someone who owns a small business, is to learn about their background, I think, because it's inspiring. Because I think as a young person, sometimes people think, oh, they're doing that because they came from a family that has these connections. And oftentimes they're just hardworking people that just went for it. So I think this, like my kids' generation, they're great because they're all sponges, and I feel like they're so much more adventurous than my generation or, the generations that came before them.
Well, be careful about that. Maybe the
I didn't go
older
that far
generations, but
back
I think
generations.
yeah, we don't want to go back that far because those are decades and centuries and all that stuff. I think we're supposed to break for a commercial, so yeah, PNM.
New Mexico has long been a land of potential. We could be this. We might do that someday. For renewable, affordable energy, someday is today. The PNM parent company is merging with Avangrid, a national leader in clean energy. We'll continue to invest in technology and energy infrastructure benefiting the state. We'll make 100% carbon-free energy by 2040 possible, while keeping bills affordable. New Mexico is more than a land of dreamers. We're doers.
Okay, we're back. And so we're talking to Michelle Hernandez, a partner with the Madrid Scholarship law firm and former chair of the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce, and also our general counsel. We pay you so much psychic income.
Zeros,
Crazy.
lots of zeros.
Lots of zeros. Yeah, we just
All
can't put a
zeros.
different digit in front of that because that's great. It's all kinds of problems. So, what are your passions? What do you really like to do? What is it that you like to do other than law?
So it's interesting. So my already had mentioned my family. So my daughters are both at St. Pius, and one's a freshman, the other one's a senior. So the senior is dealing with writing her college applications, and it's funny. She's a lot like me, in a lot of ways not like me. But she said she gets, they have to answer that question on these essays, and she's like, "Mom, I don't do anything." I'm like, "Yeah, you do a lot of stuff, but there's only so many hours in the day." So there's only so many hours in the day. So besides being a lawyer, I really do a lot of stuff with my kids. I enjoy, they both play sports. They play tennis, and they play basketball, and they play volleyball. I try to make time to make sure that I'm at many of the activities that they have. I used to play tennis, and then I don't really have a lot of time for that. But I just enjoy the moment, quite honestly. Try to keep in touch with friends, and I love watching movies, probably a little bit too much, but I have to watch them early in the day or I'll fall asleep halfway through.
Yeah, that's cool. So, so you have been involved in the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber for a few years, many years. Tell me, how did you hear about the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber? How did you get involved? What did you do, and has it been beneficial to you as well to be a part of the chamber?
Sure. So my first interaction with the Hispano Chamber is the module firm has been a long partner with the Hispano Chamber long before I was a part of that firm. But I think I was probably already clerking, and Module was nice enough to ask me to go to the Hispano Chamber Noche Encantada, their gala. And so I had just finished the clerkship with Justice Baca, and I was amazed. I didn't even know that anything like that happened in the state of New Mexico. And I honestly walked in there thinking, like, this is the Academy Awards. I'd never been in anything like that. It was amazing. And I remember on stage, I probably have two of these galas like mixed up, but I know one time it was Jose Feliciano was like playing during dinner, and then another time like Vicky Carr was in the Kiva. I think Jose Feliciano was the first one that I went to. So I think I mentioned it to Alex, and Alex says that was when he was chair. But the event was amazing, and then I do remember, people going up there and recognizing businesses and just feeling this like tremendous sense of pride of our community, of being back in Albuquerque, of just like cementing like, yeah, I'm where I need to be. And then I kind of circled back around, you know, at the firm, and just the kind of my nature. I was very involved as a student in all kinds of different activities, and I was sort of, as a professional, trying to find my niche of like, okay, what should I be involved in? And I've done a lot of different things. I was the chair of the Women in the Legal Profession Committee with the Supreme Court. I was a lot of legal things, the Hispanic Bar Association. I was president of the Defense Lawyers Association. But I kind of felt a little bit like something was missing. And I love lawyers, but sometimes you need to socialize with people who are not lawyers. And I reached out to Alex and wanted to know more about like how can I get involved, and I really want to be on the board. And he and I just kept talking, and he just let's keep the conversation going. And then before I knew it, I was on the board and continued to be involved. And as Ernie knows, I got involved with the historically underutilized business effort and served my time on the board and was chair and was a glutton for punishment and an indentured servant and served as their general counsel. So,
Yeah.
but it just was the perfect sort of marriage of like, okay, I knew I wanted to do something that was impactful, that was impactful to my community. That's the reason I didn't stay in California, because I thought, there's things I could have done in California, but I thought, there's community, but I'm like, that's not my community. I don't have that. I didn't grow up there, so.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've been huge for us at the Chamber, and we appreciate everything. And, it's always great. Thank you all.
With all the crowd.
Thank you very much. It's always great to know that you have somebody that is looking after your back legally and very helpful in things. I think we're unusual at the Spinal Chamber, our size, what we do, and the fact that we do have pro bono general counsel that is active. You're part of our team, and so we really appreciate everything you've done. If you look back on some of the cases you've had, because if you've been at Madrid since '99, that's you've probably been involved in some pretty cool things, pretty cool cases. What would be the most noteworthy case that you were involved in?
Well, I have been there a long time, and there's so many cases that I've worked on. A lot of cases that I've worked on have been impactful for different reasons. Some have been personally impactful because they've been pro bono cases. I worked on a pro bono couple of things for a family here in Albuquerque that were very meaningful for me. So the woman, she was my hairdresser, and she was diagnosed with cancer, and I helped her with her estate work, and she did end up passing away. And then let's say 15 years later, her mother was sick, and then I helped her do her estate work. So that was, I know that was, I don't feel like I did a lot of work on that, but I know that it really meant a lot to the family, so that was impactful for me. I think that there have been other cases that have been more like, more intellectually, like, enjoyable. And it's been because it's really a product of our firm, is that, I've been working with people who have been practicing law for decades and been able to lead a team, where people are millennials. And it's been very, very interesting. But it really is hard to like pinpoint a specific case. Like I said, the pro bono ones stand out in my mind because I know that it's meaningful. And it is meaningful, but it means something extra special, and people know that they, if it wasn't for me, they couldn't afford an attorney, and I did something that was impactful.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. So you all, Madrid, under your guidance, have been very, very involved in the Chamber, and I know you offer you actually offer opportunities for small businesses to come and get free legal advice. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So I am on our firm's executive committee, but I'm also the chair of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. which we started several years ago after we implemented a plan. And in the height of the pandemic and the social injustice over the last year, people will recall after the murder of George Floyd, people were getting emails from like Sears and anyway, every company was making a statement, and we talked about it at the firm, and law firms, large and small throughout the country and local, were making statements in response. And we said, we really want to do something more than that. And so we did two things. One, we were like, we want to put our money where our mouth is. And you had talked about the diversity or lack of diversity in the legal profession. So the first thing we did is created the Madrid Scholarship to offer money to help diverse students cope with their legal law school education and do that. The second thing that we did was we started an anti-racism alliance. There's a national alliance of law firms that are involved in this. But when we looked at that, we decided we really wanted to keep this local. And so we do a number of things that are addressed at helping the diverse population in New Mexico and in Albuquerque. And with regard to the Hispano Chamber, one of the things we really do believe is that how do you address systemic problems, and a lot of that is the creation of generational wealth. And we believe that one of the things that we can do is to help small businesses grow, because that's what starts the generation of wealth. And we know that for a lot of small businesses, facing a legal problem can be paralyzing. Just the thought of, one, just trying to figure out what the legal consequences is, and then two, thinking, oh my God, I gotta hire a lawyer, like where am I gonna get the money for the lawyer, and then what happens there? We understand that can be devastating. So we decided to partner with the Hispano Chamber of Commerce and do a small business clinic. So we did one clinic so far. We titled it Business as Unusual. It was done remotely. People signed in and had Zoom appointments, and it was great. I was pleasantly surprised with how many lawyers at our firm signed up for it. I mean, we have lawyers that do almost anything, and so we had tax lawyers and real estate lawyers and business lawyers and human resource type employment lawyers who signed up for that. We actually had more volunteers than businesses that signed up. So we're looking forward to doing that again, hopefully sometime during the first quarter of next year, and we'll just have to see what the world looks like then. There's nothing like having a face-to-face interaction. Also convenient to do it via Zoom. So we're going to work that out, but that is one of the things that we're really happy to partner with the Hispano Chamber of Commerce to do.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to that. So just a little bit more about Michelle. Like, what's your favorite movie?
What's my favorite movie?
What is your best all-time favorite movie?
Oh my gosh. Well, I already said I love watching movies, so I mean.
I'm putting you on the spot because it's kind of hard to think about.
It is hard to think of it. I mean, I could almost watch any movie, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And my husband gives me a hard time because he'll walk in the living room and I'll be watching a movie and he'll say, "Haven't you watched that?" I'm like, "I've watched that 5 times and I'll watch it again."
Yeah.
So,
hello, my name is Indigo Montoya.
that's a good movie. That is a great movie.
Yeah.
That is a great movie.
Yeah.
But I actually used to watch growing up. I don't know if anybody remembers this. My mom used to watch like Channel 5, and they used to have this thing called Matinee at the Bijou, and they'd have really old movies. They'd have like Citizen Kane and old movies like that. So there's a great old movie called Imitation of Life. Did you ever see that movie?
Ooh, I'm not that old.
It's a really good movie. And actually, there's a movie on Netflix now that's called Passing, and it's very similar to that. And so what it's about is there's these two women. They're little girls. Starts off with their little girls, and it's Lana Turner. So Lana Turner has a daughter, and she's a rich actress, and she has a daughter. And her maid, who is black, has a daughter, and they're the same age, and they grow up together.
Oh.
And then when they get older, the maid's daughter tries to pass as white, and she like denies her relationship with her mother, and it's a tearjerker.
Wow.
It's a like. Stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning because you want to see how it ends. Tearjerker.
That's kind of like Spanglish in a way. Did you ever see the movie
Yeah.
Spanglish? I
Yeah.
mean, there's which is a great movie, by the way.
That's a great movie.
Princess Bride, Spanglish, all that good stuff.
American Me, that's a good movie
Yeah.
too.
God, I don't think I saw that one, but, and your book, what's your favorite book, other than the Chronicles of Legal
The Magna
Doctrines?
Carta or
Whatever
something,
it's
yeah.
called, yes.
The Constitution.
Yes,
Uh,
yeah.
so my favorite all-time book is called, well, I have two of them. So one of them is Bless Me Ultima, just because it's very sentimental, and I love that book. The other book that I really love is called Reign of Gold. And I can't think of who the author is, but I actually read that when I came back to New Mexico. A good friend of mine loaned me this book. When you look it up, it's like a part of the whole curriculum when you take like a Chicano studies class. It's called Reign of Gold, and it's about a family. It's a true story about families' story when they lived in Mexico, and then how, as it continues when they immigrated to the U.S. And it was the last book that I remember. Like, I have like 3 books that I kind of start reading and I never finish.
Right.
But that was one of the books where like I like stayed up and like I just need to keep reading it. And I always remember that book because my grandmother was at that time, and she was like, "What are you reading?" I'm like, "Grandma, you need to read this book. This is like this is like," I was like, "I should write this book," like, you know. And she was very impatient, and she read that book. She read that book so much that like the cover was tearing off of it. I'm like, "That's not even my book. I borrowed it from someone." But yeah, so it's a really good book. I highly recommend it.
Bless Me Ultima. Yeah.
That one,
Rudolpho
and then-
Anaya.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
other one was Reign of Gold. So Reign of
Okay.
Gold's really good.
So, did you ever read Albuquerque by Rudolpho Anaya? Because that one, I actually think I might have liked that better than Bless Me Ultima.
You know what? I think I started that when I was in law school, and then I never finished it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That really is a good one. And so, ironically, Rudolpho Anaya, at one part of my life, was my next door neighbor across the street.
Wow.
And I didn't realize who he was at the time. I just knew he was like an author. And I went like, oh my gosh. So, no, what a great guy, absolutely at Jim. So,
So the other book that is just a fun book, and the author lives. I think she still lives in Albuquerque. It was just more chick lit. Is Dirty Girl Social Club.
oh,
Really good book. Yeah.
I think we did something with her.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
We
She
had a
came
wind
in
down
and-
or something. We did
yeah.
something with her about 6-7 years ago,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
That's a good book.
Yeah. Cool.
Chick lit. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you're a New Mexican, right? Because you've been here and you're doing everything. What do you love most about Albuquerque and/or New Mexico? What is it that keeps you here?
Well, I think you'll agree. It's not just one thing. I mean, my family and I were recently in New England, which was amazing, and the leaves were turning, and it was incredible. But there's nothing like coming back to New Mexico, and you're on that flight, and you come in and get that. Especially, I mean, when you're flying in Albuquerque, that Sandia Mountains just like hit you in your face, and you're like, "Yeah, I need to be next to a mountain. I need to see a mountain at all times." So just the environment or the sunset, and when I clerked with Justice Baca, we commuted from Albuquerque every day, and we'd look around, and it was like, this feels like we're driving through a painting.
Yeah.
The sunset would change, and during the season it would change, and when it was snow, it was incredible. And we're like, this is why all these artists came to New Mexico, and we're fortunate to live here and see this every day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, nothing beats that. And the people, I mean, people say that, and it's kind of, seems like a kind of silly thing to say, but it's true. People are very diverse and very open. No one's perfect, and we all have our flaws, and that's everywhere you live. But, I just, there's just something very warm about the people of New Mexico.
Yeah, and the food, it was really funny.
Oh, the food.
The other day I was at Bareilles in the morning, and Tom Padilla and his wife, they came by and go, wow, you're a long ways from home. What are you doing? Because they live way up in the heights. And this was at 7:45 in the morning. They're on their way to take a plane, and they're going to be gone for 4 or 5 days. They had to get their chili fix, the last chili fix, because they knew there was going to be like 4 or 5 days without.
I'd
Yep.
smuggle it when I was living in California because they had chili, but it's not the same. And it's funny that you develop a taste when you get a little bit older, right? So when my kids were young, they're like green chili, red chili, it's too hot or whatever. And Mia, my oldest, says, "Well, she's bound and determined to go out of state, which I'm sure she will." And so she asked me the other day, Mom, if I get Golden Pride burritos, do you think they'll freeze? Can I wrap them and freeze them and then take them with me in a suitcase? I said, I am almost certain you can do that.
I think that's a good idea. That's a great idea. She'll have a lot of friends.
Yeah,
Yes,
she
a lot
will.
of friends. So let's see if, so Netflix got a hold of us while we were doing this, and they're listening. And they kind of want to do a movie on your life. What would it be? What would that movie
Ernie, I think
be?
I think you found your calling on doing these podcasts. I just have to say. What would my movie be?
Yeah, what's the story, Michelle?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I saw that question on there, and I've been.
No, I just thought,
I
don't
just
give
thought
credit to this.
Perseverance. I don't know. Some of that, I don't know.
So the Latina that could, I mean, you grew up
A
in
little
Taos.
yeah.
You know, you
Yeah.
grew up in Taos. You're working. You've done everything you said. You work at one of the largest, if not the largest, law firm. You're a Latina as a partner. Yeah, it does seem like so often people think that person they're lucky. And Paco, who might be listening to this, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I heard that. It's a great thing.
I heard that on a preview recently too.
And so the reason I bring that up is because there was a soccer game between USA and Mexico, and Christian Selchuk came in for a couple minutes, and the first touch he had was a goal, and it was because he's skillful at what he does. And I know Paco was a little upset about that, but that's okay. Well, but it's true. People can think you're lucky, but really it's not. It's when you've been preparing your whole life for this opportunity to be successful in what you do. It's not something that is easy. Being Michelle Hernandez, it's not easy to be Michelle Hernandez, right? So, I mean, I have to congratulate you for all of that good stuff that you've done. And yeah, thank you very much. But honestly, there's people take that for granted. All that stuff that is given to us by you, but we don't. I want you to know that we're gonna let you join us today for our staff, because right now we are between the great, beautiful Thanksgiving lunch that we're going to have shortly. We'd like to invite everybody who's listening on this podcast to come for free food tomorrow. How does that work? Because if they come tomorrow, we're going to say free food tomorrow again. We're going to have a sign that says free food tomorrow, so they'll never get their free food. We'll just say that.
Do like a date or something.
Yeah, we'll do that.
So you do pay me.
Well, yes, we do, and you're going to enjoy the payment today. It's going to be really good. Oh man, I'm looking forward to it. So you've been married for
20 years.
Yeah, and John is a pretty good tennis player, from what I hear.
He's a great tennis player. So he's a pharmacist. That's what he actually gets paid for. But he's a good tennis player. He went to college on a tennis scholarship, and
So where did he go to college?
he went to UTSA, University of Texas in San Antonio.
Oh, cool.
I imported him from Texas, so.
There you go.
But he went to college on a tennis scholarship, and it's interesting because he apparently hadn't played tennis for a while since college, and then he moved to New Mexico. And my brother-in-law, who was at the firm at the time, asked John to go on a bike ride. So all these lawyers at work were all into biking, and he didn't have a racing bike. He just had like a mountain bike or something. And so they went on some trek, and John calls me, and he goes, "They left me." He was like somewhere at Sandia, and they went there. He was like, "This sucks." And he was like, I go, "What do you want? Do you want me to go pick you up?" And he goes, "No, I'll go." I go, "What do you mean they left you?" He was like, they went so fast. They just left me. And he came home, and he was like, "I'm going to play tennis again." So he just you've met it, he's very quiet. But somehow he just kind of looked up USTA type stuff here in New Mexico and in Albuquerque, and started playing in a men's league, and has been playing ever since. There was one time where men's league actually went to nationals,
Wow.
and they went to Indian Wells up in
Wow.
Palm Springs, and it was
Very
cool. I always tell people I would love to go to a conference where I'm the spouse, because oftentimes I go to conferences and John's the spouse and gets to do whatever he wants. And
Yeah.
I'm in class half the day, and then we get to go do
Right.
something else. So that was the first time I was the spouse there. So we
Oh,
went to La
very
Quinta,
cool.
and it was pretty cool.
Very,
But yeah, he still
very-
plays
very
often,
cool.
and he got my daughter playing, and she's playing varsity
Oh,
tennis at St. Pius.
very cool.
She's the co-captain of the team.
Nice. Okay, we're breaking again for another commercial.
New Mexico has long been a land of potential. We could be this. We might do that someday. For renewable, affordable energy, someday is today. The PNM parent company is merging with Avangrid, a national leader in clean energy. We'll continue to invest in technology and energy infrastructure benefiting the state. We'll make 100% carbon-free energy by 2040 possible, while keeping bills affordable. New Mexico is more than a land of dreamers. We're doers.
So back here with Michelle Hernandez, General Counsel for the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce, and also a partner for the Madrid Scholarship law firm. And great stuff that you've done, and you know you're still pretty young. So what does that mean? You've accomplished a lot. Your oldest is getting ready to go to college. I know that's going to freak you out. I guarantee you it'll freak you out. It's going to freak out your daughter, your other daughter as well. Lena's going to go, what?
Yeah.
So what does that mean for you in the next 5, 10, 15 years? What is the next thing? What are you going to do? If you look in 5 years and say, I've accomplished this, what would that possibly be?
I don't know. It is freaking me out that they're getting older and they're getting relief, and there's things that I'll see them and I'm like, I better do this with them because it's maybe not to be not being morbid like this last time they're gonna do it, but I'm like, it's last time we're gonna have this moment. Let's enjoy it, and I'm really trying to focus on that. Then like, what do we do after they leave? I think that professionally, I really embracing my role at the firm, being on the executive committee, being really a part of it, makes me feel like I have a role in what the future of the firm is going to be. And so, looking ahead, I just want to make sure that I'm a part of sort of adapting our firm, which is very much a family. You talk about Hispano Chambers family, and the model firm is very much a family, about making it a place where we're developing young lawyers, and we're taking care of our staff, and we're doing the kind of work that we need to do, and we're really understanding what the world is going to be like as everybody else is post-pandemic. What's it going to be like? I'll tell you that in the last year and a half, it's been different. I used to travel a lot. And when I was a young lawyer, law students were like, oh, it must be so great. I'm like, no, it's not. Because oftentimes on a plane for 8 hours, if it's not delayed, and you're in a hotel room, and I try to make the most of it and have a nice dinner or something, but it's pretty taxing on people individually and then on your family. And now we're doing everything remotely, which at first we were like, oh my God, it's so impersonal. How can you take a deposition without being in the room with the same person? Or how can you have a hearing where you're not looking straight at a judge? And we had all these sort of trappings of what the legal profession was going to look like, and what a law firm was going to look like. What are you going to do if your assistant's not like 3 feet away from you? And we've adapted, and we've adapted well, and I'm embracing it. I mean, I like the travel. And for instance, I can have 3 depositions in 1 week with people who are in 3 different places. And before, we'd have to figure out 3 different people to do it, or I'd have to travel to one place and travel to another place. So, we're getting used to that, and some people are getting used to it, but some people are kicking and screaming trying to change. But change is good. I remember starting off where people were. I still have a dictaphone sitting on my desk. I don't use it, but where people were dictating. When I was in high school, I'll tell you this real quick. I used used to be called OEA. It's the Office Education Association. It's pretty much how to be a secretary. Because I thought that's my goal. That's the best thing I do, become a secretary, have a nice office job. And so then they changed the name of it to Future Business Leaders of America.
Oh.
But it was still how to type and file and and all that. But I remember learning, and then I was a legal assistant actually right before I went to law school. I worked for a local lawyer, and we used carbon paper. You probably remember that. Remember that onion skin carbon paper with a typewriter.
Correction.
Yeah, and people who were there like, oh, well, never. Like, how could you do things without, just on the computer? And now, yeah. It's dinosaur.
So Zoom is going to stick around for a while in the legal profession. I mean, you just made it sound it makes things maybe less expensive because you don't have to travel to different places. It makes it timelier because you can be at 3 places in 1 week versus spreading that out over a longer period of time. Are the depositions as meaningful, or are they as whatever? I mean, do you get what you need out of them?
I think that, I still miss some things where if it's an important witness, I have gone to depositions in person where I'm defending my client because they want me there. And there's nothing like I need to have your support. I don't want to call you or see you on the screen. If you want your lawyer there, when you take a break, you can be reassured that everything's going okay, and there's that. So I have done some in-person depositions. But when I'm in person asking someone, depends on who the witness is. Sometimes you want to look for someone in the eye and have that kind of conversation. Sometimes it's purely informational and it's easier. One thing I need to get better at is, and you guys I'm sure are pros, maybe Paco can teach me how to do this, is we show our exhibit. Normally in a deposition I would go, let me hand this out and hand a piece of paper to everyone.
Oh.
And here we'll
Send it.
You have to get ready earlier because you send them to everybody the day before. And then when you're showing the witness, if you were my witness, I would go, look at this piece of paper and we would read it. Here you would show and you've been on Zoom calls where people show that.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So that I'd have to get used to. I have not had a trial via Zoom. I've had hearings. Again, it's convenient if I have a hearing in Farmington. I don't have to drive to Farmington or even Santa Fe. A lot of those judges, if you're in Albuquerque, would allow you the option to call in. And I always thought, the judge can't even see you. There's just a voice on the phone. I'm like, I'll go in person. And now you actually have to ask for an order to be allowed to go in person because all the judges are still having, at least the cases I'm in, they're all, at least they're Zoom or some kind of format, Google Meets, I think. They're all going to be virtual, but the trials are in person. So I have not had a trial. I think I've had I haven't had a trial during the pandemic, but I've had a couple of partners. One had a trial all Zoom. They were basically trying a case on the 3rd floor in our office building, which is crazy. They were just everything was Zoom, and they all kinds of logistics and stuff. And then another one of my partners, I think, has tried 2 cases in Santa Fe, and that sounds brutal because I still think trials need to be in person because he said, so first of all, when you go to trial, on TV, right? So you have a, counsel table, and usually it's a lawyer or 2 and a paralegal and your client. And now with the COVID restrictions, you're only allowed to have 2 people at the table. So you got to choose. You're like, okay, I guess it's me and my client, or me and my assistant, or how you're going to do that. And then the jury's there. I know there's a perception of, they're thinking, well, how come the client's not in the room? And you're just making logistical choices. I understand the client can look at it like kind of closed circuit, or somebody else can do it closed circuit and can text them, like, bring me this piece of paper or whatever. It just seems really strange. And you're totally reliant on technology. So if your system goes down or your IT can't do it, you're out of luck. And then the other thing is that people are still, at least in Santa Fe, the witnesses and the lawyers are still masked, and some of them are masked behind a screen. So, we got to hire Paco here because they don't even have this kind of system. So the jurors are passing notes to the judge saying, I can't hear the witness. I'm like, well, so I don't know I think the courts are, everybody's trying to catch up like that. But I think to judge credibility, which is what a jury does and a judge does as a fact finder, or just to make those kind of changes in trial, you're gonna see someone's face. You got to be there in person. So that.
Well, I
that-
watch Bull, that show, and they talk about the jury selections. and
I have a
that
friend
kind of
who's a
stuff.
writer on that show.
Oh, you do?
Who's a lawyer from Socorro, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, and it just seems like there's so much attention to the jury and their perception of what drives them and moves them, but also a lot of body language on the client, on stuff or the witnesses, and you
Absolutely,
don't get that in a trial.
Yeah. No, you don't get
I mean, on
that.
Zoom, so.
So you asked me like memorable cases, and I'll say that I'm a litigator. I like to be in court. I like to I like to
Debate.
argue. I like to debate and find the truth. Yeah. So, but all those kind of things, like how is this going to play the jury, and it's exciting and it's hard work and you don't get a lot of sleep and it's grueling. But when you're on, and it's very cool. And I wouldn't have it any other way. But you can hire a jury consultant with that. And we also after a trial, you get the opportunity they can say no, but you can pull the jury. So whether you win or lose, you can tell the judge, yeah, I'd like to pull the jury. So you can ask the individual jurors, like, what went wrong, what worked, what didn't. And the jury will come up with things that you're like, you could have worked hours on a specific argument. I'm like, I think a jury would like that. And then you ask them, like, what did you think of that? And like, they don't even remember that you said it or something. And that you can hire a jury consultant, and they'll say things like, they're looking at what shoes you wear, and I had heard of a case that did not go the plaintiff's way in Santa Fe, and when they pulled the jury, they said that one of the jurors, they were going along with the plaintiff, but then the plaintiff's lawyer went like this, and he was wearing like a Rolex watch, and they were like, nope,
Wow.
that's it.
Yeah.
And they watched we had a trial, and our client he actually just was paying attention, but the judge, I think that they said something like, they didn't like the way he was like leering at the juror or something. I'm like, he wasn't doing anything. just like.
So perception becomes reality and all
It,
that
or
stuff,
it's
which is weird.
distracting, right? It's distracting from the facts that you're trying to argue.
Well, I think our time is up. So, Michelle Hernandez, I can't thank you enough for being here today. I can't ever thank you enough for everything you do for the Hispano Chamber. And I look forward to you joining us for lunch, our Thanksgiving lunch.
I'm
Thank you
looking
so
forward
much
to
for
it.
being
Thanks
here
for
today.
having me.
All right. Cheers.
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 Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for the Power Up by PNM podcast hour in partnership with the Hispano Chamber of Commerce. And again, a big shout out to our sponsor, the folks at PNM, who help keep your businesses energy efficient. Don't forget to join us every Tuesday at noon to hear from those in the community that are moving us forward. And for more information about the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce, call us at 842-9003 or visit us online for more information at www.ahcnm.org, and to replay this podcast, add a /chamber chat.